Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and I thrifted over 12 yards of this watermelon fabric. And I figured out a use for a lot of the yardage. Let's get down to how I made this hat, as well as the adorable little ruffled pinafore that I made to go with it. To start the hat, I grabbed my biggest chunk of scrap EVA foam, and I immediately heat sealed it with my heat gun. Largely the reason I used the heat immediately was to get the foam to stop curling. Then I grabbed my mom's old Halloween witch hat and traced the circle out onto the EVA foam. Then realized that that circle isn't very circular because that wire was all kinds of warped after over a decade of having this hat in our house. So I used a pipe cleaner to have an even distance away from my pin and the center of the brim and get a little bit more even of a circle traced here. Then I heat sealed it again for all the rough edges that I had after cutting out the brim. Up next was the fabric. I easily traced the shape of the brim to the fabric, adding about a ½ inch of seam allowance to those edges. Also making sure that I had as much in the way of the watermelons being on the brim as compared to the open white space of the non-printed part of the fabric. Cut that out, and then I ironed it. I know you're supposed to iron your fabrics before ever starting working on them. However, since this was over 12 yards worth of fabric, there was no way I was spreading the whole thing out and ironing all of it. I got everything cut out first and then ironed all the smaller pieces, cleaning up the edges of those pieces after ironing, if needed. Oh, and now we're on to the skirt because I remembered I needed to do something important before getting too far into the hat. I am selling this pinafore, blouse, and the hat on the homepage of my website as well as Etsy, and once it is sold, I will put sold in the title of this video. The measurements are listed on the Etsy listing. To start the skirt, I grabbed myself one of my mini thrifted bed sheets and created a circle skirt. You can always use the Mood Fabrics calculator and get a really easy measurement on that. I ended up making the waist about twice as much as what my natural waist is so that I could ruffle it down and make the size adjustable by putting an elastic in later. Since this watermelon fabric was so narrow, I knew I would need to get the full circle skirt pattern from the bed sheet and then get a 1/4 pattern from that so that I could make a 4-panel skirt out of the watermelon fabric. After getting one panel cut out, I could trace it and recreate it for each panel. Also, don't forget to weigh down your fabrics with random artistic objects laying around the room because you refuse to go get your fabric weights out of the box that they are in. While I'm not willing to iron the entire bulk of fabric, I was making sure to iron specific sections that I knew I would be cutting out. I got a lot of this fabric, and it's really narrow, which is one of the reasons why it wasn't selling at the thrift store, but it also has a whole bunch of these little bitty snags, so I have to work around those pieces and keep an eye out for them. This is actually one of the bigger snags, though. That's easier to see. Still weighing down my fabric with random objects. Then properly ironing everything. And using my peeking shears to get the edges cleaned up. Ooh, that didn't even catch. Hello. Excuse me. I was supposed to do this. And keep them from fraying. Then it is time to have an argument with your dog about when it is time to go out because you're not done with this project yet. Dude! I know you scream. Time to connect all 4 watermelon skirt panels. Pinning and... well, let's not. Outer fabric, lining, clippy hanger. And now I'm gonna let this hang overnight so that this grain will pull and hang the way it's supposed to hang when I'm wearing the skirt, And then I can trim this edge so it all matches up once it's pulled the way it's gonna pull. This was the important thing I needed to do so the skirt would have multiple days to stretch, and now we can get back to the hat. I continued measuring out all the bits and pieces on my mom's Halloween witch hat. Then made a pattern for the cone and fiddled with it a bit because I wanted a more whimsical, misshapen witch hat and not so uniform. After multiple trials and errors, I figured out a pattern that would work for me. It is the 23rd, and I need to make ruffles. So I have to decide between this red or this green for ruffles. And we got the watermelon fabric. I don't want to do a combination of these two because it would look too Christmassy in my opinion. Decisions. Somebody's gonna be upset that I didn't pick the other one, so it's my choice. Yeah, I pretty much already knew I wanted to go with green, but it's mostly because I have worked in a lot of places where I've had to wear this color red all day, every day, and I'm tired of wearing this kind of red. So, we're gonna go with green so that I can have a color that I don't have to wear all the frickin' time. And this green is actually left over from a commission that was canceled. Now we have a ridiculous amount of dark green that I have used little chunks for with projects like my Shroomish, but now it has been wadded up in a bin for almost 3 years, and it needs to be ironed out so I can cut bias strips and make some ruffles. Ruffles for all the way around the hat, and ruffles for all the way around the skirt. These ones are going to be smaller, and then the skirt is going to have bigger ruffles. Putting these ruffles on the skirt will also help with the weight distribution and help the skirt flare out further when I spin. Mathing that diameter on the hat brim. And I've moved on to making gigantic bias tape. I knew I would need a lot for the green ruffles on this pinafore, so there was a lot of cutting and measuring and cutting and measuring. I have finished cutting out the hat ruffles, and I'm now on to the skirt ruffles, and I'm realizing how much fabric I need because I have to double the number that I showed you all. The regret is setting in. Now that I have all of these cut out, I need to find my green thread. And I just did a whole bunch of cleaning yesterday and the day before, so I know it's in here. It's not quite the same green that I'm going for with these, but it won't be murderous. It's close enough. Now let's see if I already have a green bobbin made up. Yes, I use an old wig box for my bobbins. Too many of them jump out of their containers, and I don't like losing my bobbins. Let's see. I should have a green left over. Oh, this is actually a darker green. I might have another serger spool somewhere that is this dark green. Let me go look. It says thread. Let's see if we got a really dark green in here. It might also be that I used up all of that really dark green for my Peter Pan costume. And it looks like I did, or that thread is missing. We're going with this green. And sadly, I wish I had more of this really dark green. But this is stash busting. We're gonna work with what we got. Pinning for continuous binding and cutting away the salvage edge on some of these. And that's not where my sewing scissors are. They're in the living room. With most bias binding, you already got this edge, this angled edge that should be the right angle. Sewing right sides together. So you make a little T shape and follow along that same angle from corner to corner. So when it sews together, you'll have a continuous binding. I hope. I hope I'm following those tutorials correctly. They're all quilting tutorials, and I'm not much of a quilter, even though that is where I started on my sewing journey. So we're going to pin these And before I go pinning all of them, I'm gonna go sew this and make sure it does what I want it to. Because I am afeared. And now it is time to watch Struggling to Make Ruffles with Rev!
To the sewing machine!
What? Okay, I'll just throw it on the floor, that's fine. Oh, where'd it go? No! Where'd it go? Alright, give me one moment, I gotta find it. In! There we go. It already doesn't want to go as planned. There we go. It was jamming. Yep, there's that jam. Nope. Denied. Okay. This apparently does not make sense in my brain because they're right sides together, but let me watch a couple more of these tutorials and see what I'm doing. Okay, I figured it out. I had sewn on the wrong diagonal. You can actually see my old stitching. The diagonal line went the other direction. It works now. Time to do it with the rest of these. Victory! Why is that so hard for my brain to understand? I might cry. Horizontal versus vertical. That diagonal. This diagonal. My pins are having a little prayer circle to hope this works. It worked! Now I just gotta cut this off and do a whole bunch of other ones. And not cry. I think I'll remember how to do this correctly now that I have the prayer circle. I'm taking care of all of them now before I put them on the machine, so I'm going to show you my process, because now that I have a process down, it's a lot easier. We have a horizontal and a vertical. Now this vertical, to go to the next one, needs to change to horizontal. So, and then we have right sides together, avoid the selvage. And then I have a nice little pathway to know which angle I'm sewing at so that when I flip this way, it'll open cleanly. And we continue. Vertical to horizontal. Okay, I don't know about you, but that was exhausting, so I need a puppy scritches break. Who's a good doggy? He gets good scritches. Okay, moving on. Ironing down all of those bias strip pieces. Connecting them and sewing them together. And I actually turned these strips into tubes so that I could flip them right sides out and have clean edges on the outside. Okay, let's get a gauge of how long these things are. The little one for the hat, we're going to measure with my height because I am exactly 5 feet tall. We've got 1, 2, not quite 3 of me, 15-ish feet of that one. And for the big thick one for my skirt, 1, 2, 4, 5 and a half-ish. Say like 22? Question mark, if I'm doing the math in my head correctly right away. 22-ish feet of this one. Now I need to loop turn all of it. I'm gonna sit down with a video and take my time on that. I have my little makeshift tool here. Safety pin method, but I have this chopstick to get me extra length, because this little safety pin will hardly do anything with the length and it'll take extra long. But if I can include about a foot worth of length in flipping the fabric, this won't take nearly as long. And I have had this method work before, but sometimes it takes some little fiddling with my hands as well, so we'll see how this goes. After about 15 minutes of flipping, I finally got this end pulled out of the big one, but now I have to unpucker the rest of it because we have a ripply snake. So it's a giant scrunchie. March 26th. On the smaller one, we have some sections like this that didn't catch in the seam when I was sewing for the noodle part. But that's okay, because they're gonna go inside the hat anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. And then I began hand sewing a ruffle I never even used. So enjoy the torture of knowing that this will never be put on the dress. Or the hat! Look at it! That's gonna look so cool all the way around. Okay, I have ruffled down the full length that I had sewn for my tube, and I'm about 1/4 of the brim shy. So I need to make a couple more lengths of green, ruffle it down, and pair it up to either end of this thing. But I'm gonna take a break and ruffle the skirt to give my hands a bit of a break, because for the skirt, I'm gonna do this slightly differently and make them look similar, but not this exact method, because my hands will not agree with me on that situation. Here's my big length, and what I need to do first is iron this flat, but then I'm gonna try ruffling it down by zigzag stitching over paracord, following along the very edge of where I iron this, and hopefully I can ruffle it down that way and then iron the larger pleats. I'm gonna make very, very big ones similar to this look, but not so densely packed. And I'm thinking I might actually make more of this so that I can put it along the straps. I'm sorry, fingers. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry, fingers. But I really love how this looks. Time to iron. Big brain moment. This is a tube. I can stick the paracord through the tube itself and ruffle it. I don't need to do stitching. Okay, that's how tired I am. I attempted multiple methods for this, but no matter what method I tried, it's still uber tedious. All of these ruffles, all this fabric, and what I'm going to be sewing next is going to be way too thick for my little Bernina. So I've brought out the industrial machine, and we have this millipede looking thing going down here. I did as many clips as I had all the way down the length. I'm sewing this up along the seamed side, and then I'm going to continue down the rest of the length here. We got a lot to go. It's March 27th, and it is about 7:30 in the morning. I got about a half hour before I have to leave, so I'm going to do some skirt math and get this situated before I get out of here. What I am going to do is see how many of these ruffles cover the 1/4 panels, so I know how many more I need to make for the skirt, and then it looks like this is actually more than what I need, so I will be using this for the straps as well. I'll definitely need to make a little more for the straps. This is also looking so cute already. I'm so excited to wear this. The math is looking like we have about 37 pleats per 1/4 panel. I have made 11 into the final panel, but I still need most of the final panel. So we are looking at making 26 more of these pleats in estimation. I'll probably make like 30 to make sure that I cover the whole thing. I had done the math for these, right? And I said I'd do 30 to make sure I have enough. Guess how many this is?
27! I only had just enough pins to make it to 27. So close!
Here's the lining skirt, and here's how much that hem dropped. A lot on this side for some reason, but I'm gonna trim that.
Also, these skirts have been dropping for almost a week now because there was something wrong with my shoulder and it affected my fingers and wrists. Still kind of bothering me, but I can function better now at least.
I'm also sitting on my fabric, so I'm the fabric weight and I don't have to bring out the fabric weights. There's that one. Time for the watermelon. Don't forget to press your seams flat and beautiful. It doesn't want to open. It's because I've been leaving it alone for almost a week. Because I was owie. Urban, says me. And that's the level of drop for the watermelon. Really a lot less than the other skirt, so cool beans. And now I can pin everything together for the bottom hem. We have a layer of lining, a layer of watermelon, and what goes in between those is ruffles. Now where is the end of this thing? Here we go. I'm gonna line up the start of the ruffles with my press seam and the little seam line that I have from this being folded right here, so everything matches up nice and pretty. Oh, wait. This gets sandwiched on the inside so that when we flip it right sides out, it's on the outside. Derp. I think I'm doing this backwards. Yeah. I didn't flip the watermelon back. Okay, redoing. There we go. Now that it's right sides together, let's try this again. I am so very glad that this was all salvage edge or mostly bias cut, because this part was the only part that frayed in the washing machine. That is amazing. Time to cut out more bias strips for just about everything. Okie pokey, April 18th. And I spent most of the time of making this costume listening to a D&D podcast, so enjoy this little snippet. Phineas Fiddle Scratch. That is the best name ever. A+ to the DM. I ironed all of the ruffles into place because my sewing machine didn't necessarily properly catch every single fold. Ironing them in cemented that fold. I started flinging this through the machine where I had initially planned to have these ruffles marked. However, they look a little too small for my liking once I flip it right sides out. So I'm gonna see about backing up the stitch a little bit, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to because my industrial machine has punched some serious holes in there. I don't know if that will go away with some ironing, but I'm gonna try to put the stitch about here instead and see if I can seam rip this one, and hopefully there won't be major holes. I'm gonna try. Smaller ruffle stitch, bigger ruffle stitch. Let's try seam ripping. I'm gonna say yes, and hopefully the holes it punched from the last line of stitching will iron out because I like having that extra 1/4 of an inch of length in the ruffles. I flipped everything right sides out. This is the only edge I left open because I knew this white skirt was going to be a little bit bigger than the watermelon skirt. So I can take off this excess, as well as I need to get these ruffles to line up evenly. I'm gonna finagle this. Match right there, stop fighting me. And my machine will try to eat this, so I'm gonna hand sew it. But if I can get the white lined up, I'll go ahead and use the machine on the white fabric to green. April 23rd, and I finally managed to finish these ruffles for going around the hat in the millipede method, all in uniform, so it looks pretty, because I really didn't like the handmade version after I'd done some of this. And I am now going to iron this mess, as well as iron in all the pleats here, cut a center hole out of the hat brim circles, and then stitch this inside and flip it right sides out, like with the skirt. More ironing because I left this costume alone for over a week. Pin the ruffles into the inside of the hat so that when it's flipped right sides out, the ruffles are on the outside. And trim away the excess because this is ridiculously bulky. Iron to press your seams nice and flat. With the foam inside this thing, I can see that the foam is ever so slightly too big and it's warping the shape. So I'm going to slim down the foam an itty bitty bit. I also want to cover the foam in tinted Cosflex because all of the lines I used to figure out where I was cutting this thing, you can see through the white fabric here. The whole point of using white foam was so I wouldn't have to paint it, but I think I'll just paint over where I have lines drawn. April 25th, and I got a couple whoopsies to fix. This has already gotten 3 layers of white paint with Cosflex mixed in, and it is not helping. So we're going to cover this in a white bed sheet. Glue down some of these scraps over the very specific points that are showing through on the hat, and then do one large circular piece to completely cover this area to smooth it out so there are no ridges when I put the actual covering for the hat on this thing. Finally, the skirt had been ruffled, and I could bring down the waistband to fit me. Adding a green band to the waist and putting an elastic through the back. Twirling test! Amazing swoosh and twirl, I love it. 15th. I had to take a little sabbatical from this project, but the Watermelon Witch is back on and I'm hoping to finish it today. I'm using this pinafore because it fits me perfectly to get the bodice front shape as well as the length and size width of the straps. And then I'll attach them to the skirt and I will finish making the hat. All we got right now is a hat brim. I gotta make the cone and attach all the accessories. Tuck those ruffles into the straps and sew. Pressed it flat and beautiful. Tacked on the straps, sewed them down, and then added snaps to the back to make the fit a little more adjustable since I will be selling this. Finally, it's time for pockets! I did lay my phone down on more scraps of that white bedsheet to make sure that it was the proper size for my phone. I used pinking shears to clean up the edges, and then I French seamed the pocket, so I don't know why I did that. Technically only one pocket because I only had one really nice seam that I could do this with. After seam ripping the one nice edge that I had on the inside of the skirt, I sewed the pockets. A good majority of the hat after this was all hand sewn because it was a lot of little fiddly pieces. I had to cut out corners around the inner hat brim so that the fabric would properly fold over and I could sew a nice little circle on the inside. And trimmed away the excess because bulk.
July 17th, hat update. We have this fully sewn, so now I have to figure out accessories. I cut this out, and I'm going to back it with dark green felt and make it a little dangly to hang off the tip of the hat, like you normally do with star or moon themed hats, but it's watermelons. Then I have to decide how I want this to dangle. This is the yarn that is closest to the green I am using. Not the greatest option. Also have this dark green ribbon, but it is ever so slightly off the color that I need. I think I might be using this though. Then, hat band options. I was originally envisioning this buckram kinda situation around the hat. However, I managed to thrift this ribbon, and while it is very watermelon-y to add that, it is a super dark green ribbon, which will add some contrast as well as hide the little stitches you can see around the edge here. I'm sewing on all the accessories, and the little dangle thing to me is starting to bug me. It looks cheap to me, and it's not super fun like I was hoping. It's also getting in the way of sewing on the hat band. I should have saved it for last, but now I know I don't want it.
It is now the moment you have all been waiting for, the reveal! Unless, of course, you've been watching my shorts where I have already shown how this costume looks. However, we're gonna treat this reveal like you've never seen it before. And if you've made it this far into the video, I am ever so grateful because the watch hours really do help my channel. So if you'd like to continue supporting me and my crazy creations, remember those subs, comms, thumbs, and a ding. You can also share the video with your very best friend in the whole wide world, as well as someone you hardly know. Supporting me on Patreon or Ko-fi will also get you some little extra tidbits and pictures and behind the scenes, all that good stuff. And welcome to the madness!